At this point, the Education Neighborhood Council Committee will come to order. Item number 1.
Item number 1 is consideration of an application to name a community Beverly Crest. The application was approved for filing on February 8th, 2008, and the primary applicant is Ron Galperin.
No cards on this? Anybody opposed to this? Anybody care? Mr. Weiss supports it. I have a letter from him.
Councilmember Alarcon, I'm Claudia Dunn with the Office of the City Clerk. Just for frame of reference, their application was received and processed accordingly, and we do have a letter of support from the council district, and the applicant or someone from the applicant's group may be here that may want to speak to the application, but if you have any questions in terms of the process, we're fine.
No, it's fine with me. Okay, we'll, if one of the other members comes, we'll let them vote up or down on this, but my recommendation is yes, and we'll hold it until we find out if Mr. Zine or Ms. Hahn will be able to make it. Item number 2.
Item number 2 are reports from the City Clerk and the Information Technology Agency in response to recommendation number 12 of the Neighborhood Council Review Commission's final report regarding enhanced remote public comment for stakeholders and video conferencing of City Council meetings.
Good morning.
Fire away.
Good morning. Mark Wolf with the Information Technology Agency.
And Claudia Dunn with the Office of the City Clerk.
Councilman, the report before you outlines recommendations on different options for approaching expanded remote testimony for council and committee meetings. As directed by council and with the recommendations in the spirit of the NCRC, we looked at a number of different phone-based and web-based technologies and came up with 6 different options that could be implemented to expand remote testimony capability. Based on access, we felt that phone would be probably the best solution to go forward if the city were to go forward with this type of a project, because of everyone basically has, or the majority of people out there in the city have phone access. Not everyone has internet access. The biggest challenge we saw in being able to go forward with this at this point is current resources with both City Clerk and ITA. ITA in our current budget has some significant challenges where we're right now really struggling with just keeping the lights on, and we've got significant shortages in our overtime and in our salaries account, and we're quite frankly really just focusing on keeping the lights on. So taking on a project like this at this juncture would be a difficult challenge for our department.
And from the perspective of the City Clerk's office, a lot of the implementation on our end would be as a result of what technology could be put in place by ITA and financed through ITA. In addition, in our office, as you can see by the various options that are before you, most of them would require implementation by the City Clerk in the sense of an additional staff person, a few more resources, just to make sure that we're properly getting the communication from the public to the council members. We do currently have existing methods of communication through the community impact statements and emails that we put on the council files, but additional resources would be difficult for us in that we're already dealing with some new initiatives and trying to get those in place with limited resources. We do have vacancies. We do have overtime challenges with our accounts as well. So I think it's predicated on what ITA's financial situation is for us as well.
What other committees should be looking at this? I mean, this was generated through the Neighborhood Council Review Commission's recommendation number 12, but should it go to IT committee and then budget, or?
Well, in light of because we do it.
I mean, this is not the this is not the technology-based committee, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
I can't pick.
I'm thinking ITGS first and then budget,
Yeah.
or vice versa.
And one of the other committees that we talked about when we were discussing different options was also going to the council committee that oversees I guess it's rules.
Oh, rules, exactly. We were talking about rules, but that would be at the end only because it's possible some of these options could impact how the council's rules operate and in terms of public comment. It may be that the rules need to be amended to deal with comment and types of
Then,
email
if we could
comment.
just reflect that in the recommendation. So I'm going to go ahead and approve it. We don't have any cards, and we'll send it on to IT committee first for their edification. I don't, I really don't know the implications of one versus the other in the context of neighborhood council system.
Yeah.
We'll
And
send it on to that policy committee.
we did as you may have seen in the report, we did, as part of the group that we pulled together to brainstorm different options, we brought in staff from Dunn as well as Ray Sonnenheim to be part of the brainstorm session, and we also contacted a number of cities. City Clerk followed up with a number of large cities from New York to Chicago to a variety of others and some local Southern California agencies to look at what they're doing. And the ones that we found that were taking public comment through either web-based or phone-based were much smaller cities, and they were doing it in what we would consider a more rudimentary way. And for example, there was one city in particular, a government agency that was taking in live call-in for their public comment for like their commission meetings, and they had a very unsophisticated phone system, like a conference call bridge, where let's say 5 people would call in, and they had to ask each of the callers actually to mute their own phones, and then they would say, okay, number 1, you're up now, and that person would have to unmute their phone. So doing that type of an implementation in a city as large as ours, with potentially the volume of people calling in, would probably be very unmanageable.
Oh, maybe we could have like 1,000 people on the line at the same time, then that would keep us busy. The one concern I do have that also I hope is reflected in the report is I believe that the person making the comment must be identifiable and legitimately so. If somebody just calls in and says, I'm Jose Smith, we have to be able to verify that that's a real person.
And in fact, that may be where, if this went before Rules Committee, that's something that could be built into the council rules in terms of
I would make
augmenting.
it as in the form of a recommendation that whatever system we use, the public commenter must be identifiable. You can't just let somebody call in and assume somebody else's identity, then there could be false statements and everything else. Other than that, let's just send it to IT and move on to item number 3.
Thank you.
Item number 3 are reports from the Department of Transportation in response to motion Han Gruel relative to the Neighborhood Council Communication Project and memorandums of understanding with neighborhood councils.
Morning, Councilmember.
Hi. You look good on TV yesterday.
Oh, thank you so much.
I don't know what you were doing, but you look good on.
Just trying to keep traffic moving. Since our last meeting with you, we took the recommendations made by you and Councilmember Hahn and others into consideration, and we worked diligently with making sure that we could accommodate the needs of the neighborhood councils as well as those of the department. And in light of that, I was able to use existing resources within the department to name Carolyn Jackson as our neighborhood council liaison, who's with me at the table right now. And she's worked with Mr. Kim, who's not, I don't see him this morning, but we would like to thank him for his effort. There he is. I'm behind you. He's right behind me, I couldn't see. I'd like to thank him so much for his effort of him and his staffing helping us to establish a program where we had a planned process where the neighborhood councils could connect directly with the Department of Transportation on issues that were of concern to them and information we wanted to share with them. So we have an illustrative review process that we put a little map on our report, on our current report, that shows the activities that the department does based on those things that we found out from neighborhood councils that they really needed to know about and wanted to know about, and those things that we also wanted to share with them, and that they would run their requests through their neighborhood council president, and so that way we would make sure that those things were fully aware by the administration of the neighborhood council. Those requests would come through the chair to us, and those that didn't would at least be transferred back to the chair so that the full neighborhood council would be aware of the requests that they were making if they were of the neighborhood council's request. And we will share information with them on our website. We have different activities that we're making sure that at least on an annual basis that they're aware of all the services that we provide so that we can keep our website up to date on those issues that are of concern to the neighborhood councils. And so far, we've gotten some favorable response from the neighborhood councils on this process. Whether they're requests for traffic control, concerns, those things are being addressed by the neighborhood councils as well. We recently had an issue at our Transportation Commission meeting regarding speed limit issues, and it came to our attention that those things weren't being shared with the neighborhood councils on an ongoing basis. These were new even to me in terms of speed limits as well as the commission. So what we've done now is establish a situation that when we study speed limits in areas for enforcement by LAPD, we will also begin to put that information that we're studying it to our neighborhood councils so they can be aware that those studies are going on and why. And we also offer to do study sessions with neighborhood councils on how speed limits affect their communities and why enforcement has to be done a certain way based on state mandates. And then at that point, they can weigh in on how they feel about those speed limit recommendations that the department makes, as well as they go through the commission, but they eventually get to committee and then to city council for final approval. We worked also, and we'd like to thank Councilmember Hahn's staff, because we worked diligently with her staff in making sure that we covered all of the areas of concern that she had regarding her motion and how the neighborhood council responses would impact the information that they received, and that we could make sure that we had a timely response back to those neighborhood councils.
The motion specifically speaks to MOUs, and there's no mention of MOUs in your report. So what is why is there no mention of MOUs?
Because originally in the report, there was MOU or at the same time, the committee also mentioned other means that we could make the connection. So we elected to take, in working with Councilmember Hahn's office, took the election of finding other planned methodologies of connecting with those neighborhood councils. So it was one of many options provided, and that's why we worked with Mr. Cooper, Dr. Cooper.
Terry Cooper, yes.
And his staff who had made those recommendations at that time.
I'm trying to... I don't understand why there's no mention of MOUs in the report. I mean, that's specifically what the motion is about.
Yeah, excuse
Absolutely.
me. Carol and Jackson.
There should be an analysis.
I wrote it, so.
Of MOUs and a description of why or why not you're recommending it. But there's no mention whatsoever, so I'm a little...
Okay. Carol and Jackson, Senior Management Analyst, Department of Transportation. When the motion was initially introduced a year and a half ago, the movement was towards MOUs, but there were some issues with MOUs that other departments had, so the Department of Transportation has decided to proceed on a different path. We will offer...
What were those issues and what, I mean, it seems to be...
We think things have evolved in a year and a half beyond an MOU process.
Like
It's
what? What
arose
does that
by
mean?
any other name.
You sound like my staff. Give me exactly what you're talking about, because I want to know why an MOU was not chosen. I mean, or elected.
We didn't elect to go with an MOU. We understood that with
why?
regard to the staffing, because we really couldn't have control over some of the commitments we may make in an MOU that we may not be able to follow through depending on staffing and other issues. We weren't sure what the MOU would involve that we could address and commit to directly. So what we elected to do was to go follow the planning's path. At that time, the Department of Planning wanted to have an early warning system of all issues coming toward them. So we decided to follow the path that the Planning Department had put in place of an MOU. That's why we worked with Dr. Cooper and some of the early writers of the MOU and other procedures. So we decided to choose that path because the commitments at least could be made that we could follow at that time in a process.
So but the commitments that you're making here, if you put those into an MOU, are you suggesting that because of the MOU you might not be able to follow those commitments? Or that you can make these commitments but we can break them because we don't have an MOU?
My intention is not to break anything. My intention is to try to follow a procedure that will accommodate the needs of the Neighborhood Council and the City of Los Angeles. The MOUs were one of many ways that we could do that. And I chose, in terms of what we had learned from the Planning Department's process, that seemed to be working very well, that an MOU was not the best path, especially in light of many of the things that we wanted to find out from neighborhood councils that they wanted to understand from the Department of Transportation, what we could offer to them.
Have we had problems with MOUs? Is that what is there an inference here that?
Well, the only department that I know that actually entered an MOU was Department of Water and Power. And I don't know that they.
Legal Affairs and Public Works were also looking at.
I'm not aware that they entered
what
one.
happened, but was there a problem with the DWP MOU?
Bangwan Kim, Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. DWP is the only department currently with an MOU, and the feedback that I've been receiving both from mainly departments is that an MOU is more static. And in terms of the agreement that they reached 5 years ago may not be relevant to what the needs are now. And I believe that the approach that departments are looking to make is more of an interactive dialogue with neighborhood councils to identify what their interests are, what the departments.
Sounds like the city has a problem making a commitment.
I'm not here to say that, but I think it would be more.
No, I said it because an MOU would be the clearest form of agreement. Anything else would be a moving target, and I think there's a reason why. There are MOUs, and the whole notion of the neighborhood council is to build trust. You build trust by keeping your commitments, and but I'm not suggesting that the MOU be so detailed and onerous that we cannot adjust. And the integration of communication can be part and parcel of the document. So I don't know why we don't do it.
Well, I would be supportive of a written document that allows an evolving relationship to grow over time.
I think the charter of the City of Los Angeles, believe it or not, is an evolving document. We can't see it when we're looking at it in short term, but when you look at long term, it evolves. It takes a long time. I'm not suggesting we create a document like that. It clearly has to be more flexible, but some of the things should. I just can't imagine what kinds of things you would put in the MOU that would be so difficult to commit to.
I think based on past practice, mainly with DWP, that the agreement was written such that it locked the department and neighborhood councils into a relationship that didn't grow over time. And so when the new general manager came in...
Sounds like marriage.
Exactly.
And like I said, we're having problem making commitments here.
You are? Does your wife know that?
No, not me.
Not
the
you.
city of LA.
Oh.
I really think these ought to be MOUs. I don't think they need to be detailed. I don't think they should be talking about like rates, but for example, they should be talking about when rates change, there will be a certain process of communication that will protocols that will be established if the rates should go up. If, for example, the dash service is going to cost money or something else is going to cost money, then there should be a process where the community can engage, the neighborhood council specifically. And I don't think that that's a commitment that's onerous. I think we should do it anyway. So I don't understand. Yeah, I'm gonna send this report back because I really want to. I want to have a definitive answer as to why DOT is not choosing MOUs or bring an MOU. And if the motion clearly asks for an understanding of why MOUs were not done with the 4 neighborhood councils at the time. Obviously, we have 90, so we shouldn't do 90 MOUs. I mean, that would just be ludicrous. But there could be a broad MOU with a subset of the neighborhood councils, like with DWP, where a committee convenes of representatives of the neighborhood councils. And but if there's a reason why we shouldn't do that, I want it spelled out so that everybody knows in the full light of day.
Timing-wise, there may be a good opportunity. Rita has agreed to appear before the Neighborhood Council
That was before
Congress.
my recommendation here.
The General Manager, Robinson, has agreed to participate in the Congress on October 11th, so maybe that could be one of the subjects that we...
When you say appear, you know, are we just going to talk to the neighborhood council? Are they actually going to engage in work groups?
No, this is very much a dialogue sessions between city departments and neighborhood councils.
That's better. But so that's all I'm asking for. I'm, you know, if there's a reason why we shouldn't do neighborhood councils, I think you need to go back and think about it with greater details to be able to defend your position. Because honestly, if I'm thinking it, I'll guarantee you there's a bunch of neighborhood councils out there that are thinking of it. And if you don't present a concise, clear response to the question of why no MOU, you're going to get hammered by who knows which neighborhood council. And I don't think we should approach it that way. I think we should continue to build the protocols that you're building, but specifically on the issue of MOU, I think the neighborhood councils deserve a response.
May I ask a question? Do you think neighborhood councils want an MOU with each department separately? Or are we talking about a citywide MOU? I'm trying to understand exactly why we would do this department by department then. Or would we have a framework from a citywide standpoint that kind of lays a framework for an MOU that every department could sign up to?
That's a good question that maybe you should raise in the context of your response, but my answer would be the significant departments, yes. Like certain departments, they wouldn't need an MOU. I mean, the general services, I don't know that they need an MOU. IT, I don't think they need an MOU. The personnel department,
I think that's
maybe,
right.
maybe not, but CAO, I don't know. But transportation, absolutely, it impacts every inch of the city.
LAPD?
Yes, absolutely, LAPD. Yeah.
So I would be willing
That's an
to
easy
work.
one for me.
I would be willing to work with DOT, but also other departments to see what kind of common elements we might want to look at across the board, because I agree that we don't want one MOU with one department to look radically different than another department. Of course, the needs and the issues are always different, but if we could stick to some basic principles in terms of what kind of relationships are we looking to build over time
Well, I
between
think
city
that's a
departments and
good
neighborhood
idea.
councils.
That's a good idea, and so DOT will continue to build protocols with the neighborhood council system as indicated in the report, and we'll come back with a report in 60 days, and maybe you should work with the city attorney on this sort of boilerplate approach to
Gwen Poindexter, City Attorney's Office. It's not really a legal issue because each department determines what
The purposes of an MOU have been really to establish what the early notification.
Yes,
But there are
I was
certain-
just
certain,
going to say that.
Certain protocols that will remain constant no matter who they,
I don't think that's necessarily the case. I mean, DWP was so specific. I mean, I actually reviewed that MOU.
Right.
Very detailed.
and that's the problem.
Well, but that's the nature of the beast because of the vast different things that the city does.
Right.
That it's very difficult to do, in my opinion, a boilerplate in terms of standard timeframes because every department and every commission has different regulations that relate when things have to be processed. But I can certainly be there
I
to
don't think
advise.
that we're
But
talking about standard timeframes. I think we're talking about boilerplate in terms of establishing levels of communication that every department.
although
I don't know, Mr. Kim, maybe you can explore it with your staff and see what kinds of
Yeah.
ideas you might come up with.
We will, and I think this is very much an evolving process, so the lessons learned from Department of Transportation, we can then look to apply to other departments that would be interested.
Well, we haven't learned anything yet, so we're okay. And I'm not suggesting that anybody's screaming or yelling about DOT. I'm just saying that I think the neighborhood councils would appreciate an MOU situation that they could rely on.
just a point for you to remember. Recall that you all asked a working group to come up with a strategy report to determine how neighbor councils and departments can interface more readily with neighbor councils. And currently, the department is asking the departments to come up with protocols and guidelines, as well as working with the neighbor councils to see what issues are important. And that report is still pending before council. And that was one of the recommendations. I think it was recommendation number 5. I don't know for a fact.
Mm-hmm.
But one of that recommendation included an option of departments exploring an MOU or alternative ENS regulations that we're kind of evaluating right now. And that report from the department is coming back to you probably in another 45 to 60 days.
Well, why don't we fold this into that? Can we combine the two council files? Does anybody have a problem with that?
They are interrelated.
It's fine if that's...
The report, when it comes back, can be referred to both council files.
Yeah, this would be a receive and file anyway. I mean, they're going to move forward with what they've put together, so it doesn't really matter. But if we fold them in together, we'll keep a focus on the whole notion of MOUs and the other forms of communication that we establish. I think that's a good idea.
And then for clarification, allow this matter to move forward as a receive and file.
No. Is there some way to connect the two?
We can continue this in committee, and then when the report comes back, hear both items together.
Great, do it
Okay.
that way.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'll forget. Okay, we have one card on this.
I just want to, this, this was my motion, and I obviously was looking for a memorandum of understanding. But again, and I think Ms. Poindexter pointed it out, the real purpose of this is the section in the charter that says, neighborhood councils should have enough time and notification of an impending decision or action to weigh in on that matter. And sometimes I still feel like maybe we're trying to create these in a little bit of a vacuum, not really understanding what it is neighborhood councils want. And I'm not a big fan of this boilerplate idea. I think that gets the city back into this just kind of rote, bureaucratic thing. Okay, we all got a boilerplate memorandum of understanding with neighborhood councils, and then we get back into the situation where we're making decisions and we're doing things, and the people that are most impacted by our decisions don't have an opportunity to really weigh in on that and let the council know how they're feeling about actions. I look at the parking meter increase that was passed as a part of a budget package, back in May. It's, I don't know about the rest of the council members, it's wrecking havoc in some of my neighborhoods. No warning, They were never told about it. All of a sudden, signs go up, and it's now an increase in parking. And I think that's the kind of thing we're talking about. And I've looked at this a little bit, but I don't know, how that action would have fit into this. I don't know how, the department would have been able to communicate with neighborhood councils on something like that. But again, I think departments are vastly different. I see DOT being very different than LAPD or DWP. And I think what I would like to see from all this is what are neighborhood councils wanting? And hopefully, this dialogue at the Congress will find that. But I'm not interested in departments coming up with these in a vacuum on just how they're going to communicate. I think we got to have a two-way thing on what neighborhood councils are wanting to get from city government. What's different about now that we have neighborhood councils and a new city charter? Or are we back to the way we always did things, where people in City Hall make decisions and then it trickles down and eventually people find out about it? That's not what I'm interested in. So, I really want to make sure you're listening to neighborhood councils on how they expect DOT to interact with them on a number of issues.
Okay, let's be clear. A boilerplate is not the same document from one entity to the next. It merely has certain things that are common to all the entities involved in the agreement, but every document is going to be different.
Yeah, I don't want people just filling in the blanks for each department, depending on. I just think we're beyond that.
They're filling in the blanks.
No, but on some boilerplate.
They're not just, the thing is, they just don't have an agreement with the neighborhood council system.
Well, let me just tell you a little bit about what we've already done. Is the survey we issued about 60 days ago was one of the pieces we used to build our proposal that you see in your report. I am in daily contact with neighborhood councils. There is a discrete email address that I pick up twice a day. I respond to those that same day. They get follow-up on that. If they want something else, they can tell me, and we'll try and provide it. We're doing the best we can within the constrained resources we have this year.
That's individual response. There are some systemic issues at DOT that
take
need to be.
the parking meter increase. I want to hear how that would have happened.
Issues that the department needs to respond to. The department as a system needs to respond to the neighborhood council as a system. For example, when you're talking about it changing the routes for Dash or modifying something else, it's not individuals who should be contacting you. You should systemically inform the neighborhood council system. So
no, that's what we mean. Is the councils, not individuals, but the councils themselves through their chair responding back to us. We actually have individuals, but also the councils themselves.
We should respond to all individuals, whether neighborhood
that's
council
what I mean.
members or not.
Both
that
are
responding. That is not even the discussion.
No.
What we are talking about is a system of a department and its relationship with the system of neighborhood councils. Now, there may be things that are unique to neighborhood councils, but by and large, the kinds of things that I'm talking about that they should be informed about are broader issues. And like if you're going to cut service, you should tell everybody. And particularly those that are affected. So let's say you're going to cut one little line. So you obviously want to communicate with those neighborhood councils that are impacted by that. But if you're going to cut a system-wide, then you want to tell all the neighborhood councils. The question is, what are the protocols established that I believe should be in the form of an MOU to communicate with the neighborhood council so that we guarantee that they have access to the information and a process for input that is systematic, not just catch as catch can on an email on a Tuesday morning. That's not what I'm talking about.
What I was hoping to see was something like a menu of services that neighborhood councils could access by each department. Okay. I had a meeting with DWP, and I shared this with the general manager, that they have a program that they invested in that offers a similar kind of service. So ideally, in my mind, each neighborhood council should be able to access each department and say, of the 30 services or issues that this department is involved in, I want 5 of them. I would like to be plugged into 5 of them because the danger is overwhelming the neighborhood councils. So you want to be able to give them the choice of the issues that concern them and then make it flexible. So I think the issue is largely a communications interface between the city and neighborhood councils. And that's what I'm looking to build over time, because we really have to do something that's more uniform and more accessible. Right now, it's just a patchwork. And the communication between the city and the neighborhood councils is really not consistent. So that's what I was hoping to look at building over time, and ITA would be a big help in helping us figure out what to do.
That's exactly the main concern. The main concern, I don't know about selecting services or all that, but the main concern is information and communication, that the neighborhood councils should be fully informed to the extent that they need to be, not from our perspective, but from their perspective.
Right.
And that there's an ability for them to communicate with the system. The way that they change the system has nothing to do with your MOU. I mean, it could, but hopefully through communication that'll happen. But we've also sent the whole neighborhood council file issue. They can go to their council member and complain. They can do a number of things, but I'm just talking about the protocols for communication to make sure that they're fully informed. The fundamental element in any democracy is a fully informed plebiscite,
Right.
and in this case, that's the neighborhood councils, and that's all I'm trying to achieve here. I'm not trying to get into details about, routes of service and that kind of thing. But I think there are some system-wide issues that they should know how they communicate or who they communicate with. And I mean, some of that's why I said the only thing that's short here is there's no MOU saying this is what it is. And any agreement has some kind of flexibility clause, right, Gwen? I mean, any agreement,
generally.
unless you're doing a really bad document.
The DWP could be amended.
Yeah, you have to have some flexibility because things change. So that's all I'm talking about. I'm not talking about. I want neighborhood councils are essential, by the way, to the transportation system. These neighborhood council members. What was it yesterday that they were talking about how somebody could tell whether a signal was off by a second or something, and
A neighborhood council could?
no, but there are people out there, and I mean, as a neighborhood council knows what the problems are in their community better
Right.
than even the officials at DOT. I
Right.
mean, with all their technology, somebody in the neighborhood council will know the real human dynamic of what is going on out there, and they can change it. That's what we used to do with the mobility action committees, and it was a very effective little tool. In fact, I put you on it. And it was a very effective little tool that the neighborhood councils, to me, are like a bunch of little mobility action committees to communicate with DOT what issues they have in their community. And that's how I'd like to see it used.
Well, I'd be more than happy to help
So
Department
we're
of
going to combine
Transportation.
this with the other broader report that is coming back on,
I don't know the date exactly.
yeah.
What's that?
Jose, can you track that down, and we'll have it come back in 60 days? And
Let me just add 2 items. One is a neighborhood council recently testified at a Transportation Commission that they did not support police radar in a specific area where they were not informed of the particulars. And the same neighborhood council, or no, adjoining neighborhood council, excuse me, very upset about a traffic light that went in on the street. There was no information, so the community was up in arms. So the critical notification is important to make sure they get notified.
Right.
Just want to add that.
Okay, we have 2 cards that don't pertain to this, so I'll just call those folks up. Ron Galper, let's go back to item number 1. This is regarding Beverly Crest. We did have 1 card, Ron Galperin. My intent, I recommended support for the name change, and Jack Weiss has submitted a letter to that. Yes.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, Councilmembers Zine and Hahn. I'm Ron Galperin. I'm here to represent the Crest Neighborhood Association, of which I'm president. I'm also on the Bel Air Beverly Crest Neighborhood Council. The Crest Neighborhood Association, as you probably saw from the material in front of you, is a small little pocket, actually surrounded by the city of Beverly Hills on three sides off of Coldwater Canyon. It's an area that was developed in the 1920s, and at the time it was called Beverly Crest, and that name kind of fell out of use. A couple of years ago, I and a couple of other neighbors created the Crest Neighborhood Association, and we now have a very active and vibrant neighborhood association, and as part of that, we wanted to revive the signs from the 1920s and the logo that the original developer used. And that's why we are here today, because in order to be able to put those signs up on city property and on lights, for example, we needed to be officially named, and it's also a great way to rally the neighborhood. I think you've got pretty much everything you need in this file. I do have also a couple of wonderful photos and logos from the 1920s if you need them. Interestingly enough, this neighborhood had a Hollywood-like sign that said Beverly Crest up in the hills back in the 1920s. That is long gone, but there are actually some great historical photos of that.
Yeah, we're not approving the sign.
Oh, no, I know that. No.
Who's going to pay for it?
This is just about the...
That's a whole different discussion.
No. This is just about the sense of the historical name of the
Who's
neighborhood.
going to pay for the signs?
Oh, the neighborhood association. We have the money, and we pretty much have the design, although obviously that has to be approved through the city, and we have all those guidelines, and we're ready to go.
Let me just caution you that...
This doesn't improve the sign.
No, I understand. I just want to
Sure.
give you a word of caution that we did that in Woodland Hills. Along Ventura Boulevard, they posted these wonderful signs along the streetlights. A couple of them have been stolen, a couple have been vandalized. They had to go through a variety of approvals because of the wind, the rain, the this, the that, the other. It's a cumbersome process, but I'd also caution you, have additional dollars if they get vandalized, if they get stolen, because that's what we found on Ventura Boulevard with the Woodland Hills signs.
Yeah, we actually have more than enough money. Thank you very much for that, council member. We have more than enough money both to fabricate the signs, to maintain them, to replace them, and to install them. So we also have all of the rules that have been set out by the city in terms of the exact size and material and
weight.
Coding and all that kind of stuff.
This is merely to allow for the name change. It doesn't speak to signage or anything
Exactly.
else. And they can
It's
work
just
that
about
out
the
with
name.
Their council member, I'm sure. And so Ms. Hahn moves this item for approval, and all of us concur, so that matter is approved.
Great, and I just want to thank the committee. I also wanted to thank many people at Dunn who worked on this, a number of other departments that signed off on it, the city clerk, which actually spent quite a bit of time on this, and the office of Councilmember Weiss and Councilmember Weiss for helping us out. So
Okay,
thank
thank
you
you.
very much.
Good.
Item number 2, I wanted to refer that to IT committee, because there's a lot of different information here that has to be sorted out in terms of the preference of the kind of communication, and I think it needs to go over there. If there's no objection, that will be the order. And then we have one public comment card. Mr. Weiss? Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Okay.
Excuse me, just for clarification, Chair, on item number 2, when we're moving it forward to the ITGS committee, do you want that information then to come back to? Okay, thank you.
How are we this morning? All right, good. Hopefully you'll be the same way when I'm done. Since kindness hasn't gotten me anywhere, I thought I'd be a little bit more blunt today.
Okay.
I'm concerned, Mr. Alicon, about your failure to schedule your motion, as you promised about a year and a half ago, on a way to do what the mayor's doing unlawfully, lawfully, and that's run the schools. We just are witnessing in Washington, D.C., what happens when our representatives, our oversight, our legislators fail in their public trust to monitor what's going on. Now, what the mayor could be doing It's basically an unregulated, and what I've given you is an excerpt from an opinion by Judge Janobs in the AB 1381 case. You can review, you can just look at the yellow. Bottom line is Judge Janobs basically opined that the mayor clearly, she didn't base her ruling on this, but it's in the opinion, and it says the mayor doesn't have the authority under the charter. Now, you guys are our only check and balance on this. If the mayor is doing a great job, then wonderful. There's no downside to basically providing the necessary oversight. Likewise, if he's doing a lousy job, we need to know that too. Now, we've learned from Joyce Foster's dismissal. Now she's been reappointed. We've learned from maybe what's going on in Watts that the mayor, and the LA Weekly fortunately did a public service and gave us a schedule for the last 90. It's not clear the mayor is engaged to the extent that he needs to be engaged. Now, if we don't have the oversight by the city council, admittedly, we're screwed. The way we're going to have to, and the city attorney, by the way, has done legal research on this. Rocky told me himself about a year ago. Happened to catch him. Bottom line is, you guys, we need to have a committee, and by the way, you have, and I'm going to leave you this too. Under Section 217 of the Charter, every committee chairman has the power of subpoena. They can put witnesses under oath. We can get documents. We can do this the right way. And I'll leave you a copy of it in case there's any question. But the city attorney has information. We need to get a committee hearing going, finding out what is going on so that the mayor, that the city council basically can validate and ratify what the mayor's doing. Now, I know some city council members are more concerned about this than others, but the bottom line is if it's going to be a screwed up mess and the city council sits back and does nothing, then you know what? It's going to be on your heads. And I think that's a violation of the public trust, and I would ask that we be a little bit more assertive and more aggressive, and that you, Mr. Alarcon, live up to the promise you made to me a year and a half ago, because I said to you then, if you don't do it, you will have failed, and up to now, respectfully, you failed. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no more public comment, so this meeting is adjourned.
Skip to,